Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's production of The Importance of Being Earnest by the Cuckfield Dramatic Society, a play by Oscar Wilde in 3 acts. After the first act, there will be an interval of 20 minutes, when wine, beer and chalk icing, of course, will be available. I must ask you to make sure that phones are off, no recording, no photography, please. And in the event of an emergency, there are 2 emergency exits, one there and one there. Enjoy the evening.
Polite to listen, sir.
Well, I'm sorry for your sake. I don't play with much accuracy. Anyone can play with accuracy. But I do play with a wonderful sense of expression. When it comes to the piano, sentiment is my forte. I say science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, do you have the cucumber sandwiches cut ready for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Splendid. By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shoreham and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne entered as having been consumed?
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Yes. Why is it that in a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink champagne? I asked Millie for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married households, the quality of the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Is married life really so demoralizing?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once. That was as a consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm very interested in your private life, Lane.
No, sir, it is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. If we can't rely upon the lower orders to set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
My dear Ernest, what brings you to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, LG.
Well, I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 4 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country?
What do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours. Neighbours.
By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Eh, Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello? Why all these cuts? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, we are Augusta and Gwendolyn.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well, but I'm afraid that Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way she flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I come up to town expressly to propose to her.
Ah, I thought you said you would come up for pleasure. All that business.
How much of a romantic you are.
nothing romantic about proposing. It's very romantic to be in love. But there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. One may be accepted. Believe one usually is. But the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I shall certainly try to forget that.
Yes, I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce courts were specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there's no use speculating on the subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're intended especially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you've been eating them all the time.
It's a very different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter instead. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
Ah, very good bread and butter it is too.
You eat this as if you're going to eat it all. You act as if you're married to her already. You're not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. They don't get caught.
That is not.
Isn't nonsense. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees in the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent.
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my birth cousin. And before I allow her to marry you, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean? Algy by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left the last time he was out here.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? Oh, Mr. Goodness, you've let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it, very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would. I happen to be more than usually hard up with me.
There's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
That's very mean of you, I must say. However, it makes no matter. For, well, now that I look upon the inscription inside, I see that the thing isn't yours at all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. You've no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a man's parenting cigarette case.
It's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one should read.
I've no doubt about that. I've no intention of discuss modern culture. It's not the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. You did say you didn't know it was that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Oh, your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady. She has 2 lives at Tunbridge Wells.
But why does she call herself Little if she's your aunt? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. Surely that's a matter that an aunt is allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think all aunts should be exactly as your aunt. It's absurd.
Well, why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. Now, I have no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make it out. And besides, the name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
Oh. You've always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Earnest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name were Ernest. You are in fact the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's absurd you say your name is Ernest. It's on your cards. I have one of them here. Mr. Ernest Worthing, V4 the Albany. I shall keep this as proof that your name is Ernest. Don't you attempt to deny it to me, to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else?
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes. But that does not account for the fact that your small aunt Cecily, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, calls you her uncle. Oh boy. You much better have the thing out at once.
Ouch! You talk exactly as if you were a dentist. Very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. Produces a false impression.
Well, that's the sort of thing that dentists always do. Go on. I may say that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret bunburyist. Now I'm quite sure of it.
Bunburyist? What do you mean by bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression, just as soon as you are good enough to tell me why are you Earnest in town, Jack in the country.
Very well. Produce a cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, produce your explanation. Pray, make it improbable.
Oh, dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his grandmother, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle through motives of respect you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country, under the guard of her admirable governess, Miss Prison.
Now, where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. And I may tell you quite candidly, it is not in Shropshire.
Oh, I suspected that, my dear boy. I have Bunbury in all over Shropshire on no less than 2 occasions. Go on. Why are you Earnest in town, Jack in the country?
Oh dear Algy, I don't know if you're able to understand my real motives. You're hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can either be said to be conducive very much to either one's health or one's happiness. In order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most reckless grips. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
Oh, the truth is never pure, rarely simple. Modern life would be very dull if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
Yes, that wouldn't be such a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. You should leave it to people who haven't been to university. They do it so well in the daily papers. No, what you really are is a bunburyist. I was quite right in saying that you were a bunburyist. In fact, you're one of the most advanced bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down to the country as often as I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, I shouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's. I've really been engaged on to Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anyway tonight.
Yes, I know. It's exceedingly careless of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving an invitation.
You'd much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I have no intention of doing anything of the kind. In the first place, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite often enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm treated as a member of the family and sent down with either no woman or two. And in the third place, I know exactly whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. It's not pleasant. It's not even decent. That sort of thing is enormously on the increase. Do you know the number of women in London who flirt with their own husbands now? It's perfectly disgraceful. It's simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I will tell you the rules.
I'm not a bunburyist at all. Yes, if Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Yes, I think I'll kill him anyway, in case Cecily is becoming a little too fond of him. Yes. So I think I'll get rid of Earnest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your the invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. If you ever get married, and it seems an extremely problematic state to me, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time with it.
If I ever marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, she's the only girl in the world I ever would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Well, Well, then your wife will. You don't seem to realise that in married life, 3 is company, and 2 is none.
My dear young friend, that is the corrupt French drama theory that they've been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, but the happy English home has proved it in half the time.
Oh, my dear Algy, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything these days. There's so much beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relations and creditors have ring that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can get her out of the way in 10 minutes, in order that you might have an opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, might I have the pleasure of your company at dinner tonight?
Oh, very well. I suppose so, if you must.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. So shut up.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax. Good afternoon,
I'm feeling very well.
Now, that's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for development. And I intend to develop in many directions.
Oh, I'm sorry if you're wrong, Lady Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I haven't been here since the death of her poor husband. I never saw a woman quite so altered. She looks at least 20 years younger. I'll have a nice cup of tea and one of those cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Of course, Aunt Augusta.
Would you come and sit over here, Gwendolen?
Oh, no thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane. Why are there no cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
Oh, it really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury,
Yes.
who seems to be entirely at pleasure now.
I hear that her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour, though from what cause? Of course, I couldn't possibly say. Now, I've quite a treat for you this evening. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farker. She's such a nice lady and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. You could put my table out completely. Your poor uncle would have to dine upstairs alone. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me, but the fact is, I've just received a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again, and they seem to think I should be with him.
It is strange, Algernon. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I'm bound to say, Algernon, I think it high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind as to whether he's going to live or die. This shilly-shallying over the question is absurd. Nor do I approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I find it morbid. Sickness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in other people. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always saying this to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice, at least not as far as any improvement to his ailment is concerned. I should be obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury, from me, if he would be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday. For I'm relying on you to arrange my music. It's my last reception. Now, we must have something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everybody's practically said everything they had to say, which, in most cases, was not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, if he is still conscious. I think I can promise you he'll be right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays well, people don't listen. If one plays badly, people don't talk. But if you'll come into the next room for a few moments, I'll run through the programme I put together.
Oh, thank you, Algernon. That's most kind of you. I'm sure the programme will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to find them improper. They either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is even worse. But German, on the other hand, sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and I believe is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else, and it makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I've met you, I've admired you more than any girl I've ever met since I met you.
I am quite well aware of the fact. And I've often wished that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest?
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, of course it is, but supposing it was something else, you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care for the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibration.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say that I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? Oh, no. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. Yes, there's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, yes, surely. You know that I love you, and you have led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you're not entirely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity, and to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
No. Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling.
Oh.
How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
My own one, you are the only girl I've ever loved in my life.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. You know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. Wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing hasn't quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
Mr. Worthing and I are engaged to be married, Mamma.
My dear Gwendolyn, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to somebody, either I or your father will inform you of that. Engagement is something that should come to a young girl as a surprise, either pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It's hardly something she can be allowed to arrange for herself. And that's for you, Mr. Worthing. I have a few questions I'd like to put to you. While I'm making these enquiries, Gwendolyn, you will await me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
Below in the carriage, Gwendolyn. The carriage, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mamma.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the Duchess of Bolton. In fact, she and I work together on this matter. However, I am prepared to enter your name should your answers to my questions be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I do smoke.
I am very glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. Far too many idle young men in London as it is. How old are you?
32?
Yeah, very good age at which to be married. I am of the opinion that a man who wishes to be married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
Oh, I am very glad to hear it. I cannot approve of anything which interferes with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic flower. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Unfortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would be a serious danger to the upper classes. Probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year?
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
Oh, that is not unsatisfactory. What with the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure these days. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all there is to be said about land.
I have a country house with some land attached to it, of course. About some 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, poachers are the only people who make anything out of it.
A country house? Oh. How many bedrooms? Actually, that point can be cleared up later, can't it? You do have a townhouse, I presume. A girl with a sweet, innocent nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back in 6 months' notice whenever I like.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Ah, unfortunately, that is no guarantee of respectability these days. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
Yeah, the unfashionable side. I knew there was something. However, I suppose that could be altered fairly easily.
Do you mean the fashion or the size?
Both, I presume, if necessary. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They come and dine with us, or at least come round in the evening. Now, on to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I'm afraid I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like a curse, doesn't it? Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, where I say I have lost my parents, Lady Bracknell, the fact is it'd be nearer the truth to say my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. You see, I was found.
Found?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. The late Mr. Thomas Hardy, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with the first-class railway ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
Oh,
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag. Some large brown leather handbag with handles to it, an ordinary handbag, in fact.
And in what locality did this Mr. Cardew come across, this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station. You've given him mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Right in mind.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I must confess I am bewildered by what you just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, with or without handles, seems to me to display an utter contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life. It reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. I assume you're familiar with what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular location in which this ordinary handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station may serve to conceal a social indiscretion, and indeed has probably done so before now, but can hardly be regarded as a sound basis for an assured position in good society.
Well, may I ask you what you advise me to do then? I need hardly say I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make every effort to produce at least one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that, Lady Bracknell. I could produce the handbag at a moment's notice. It's in my dressing room at home. Surely that would be enough to satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir?
Yes.
What has it to do with me? Surely you cannot imagine that Lord Bracknell and I would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with every loving care and attention, to marry into a cloakroom and to form an alliance with that parcel? Good afternoon, Mr. Worthing.
Good afternoon, Lady Bracknell. Oh, for heaven's sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algy! How idiotic you are! Oh.
What's that, old boy? Did it go off all right? Oh, don't tell me she refused you. Gwendolyn's always refusing people. It's the way she has. It's very ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn's as right as a trivet as far as she's concerned. We're engaged. Her mother. Perfectly unbearable. And I never met such a gorgon. I don't know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she's a monster, without being a myth, which is unfair.
I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose one shouldn't talk about your own aunt in front of you in that way.
My dear fellow, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who have the remotest knowledge about how to live, or the slightest instinct about when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
Indeed.
Well, I won't argue, Matty. You always want to argue about things.
Well, it is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself.
You don't think that Gwendolyn's going to become like her mother-in-law in about 150 years, do you, Algy?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy.
Oh.
No man does. That is his.
Is that clever?
Very well put. Quite as clever as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Where you go, people are clever nowadays. The thing is becoming an absolute public nuisance. I wish we had a few fools left.
Oh, we do.
I should strictly like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools. Well, the clever people, of course.
Oh, what fools.
By the way, have you told Gwendolyn yet about your being, Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, my dear. The truth isn't quite the sort of thing you tell to a nice fine girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way you behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her, if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
Nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
Oh, before the end of the week I should have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris quite suddenly of apoplexy. People die. Lots of people die quite suddenly of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but that sort of thing runs in families. It's hereditary, you know. You had much better say a severe chill.
Are you quite sure severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest carried off suddenly in Paris by severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too interested in Ernest. When she felt his loss a great deal.
Oh, that's all right. Cecily isn't a silly romantic girl. She's a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I should rather like to meet Cecily.
I shall take very good care you do not. She is excessively pretty and only just 18.
And have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have a ward who is excessively pretty and only just 18?
My dear fellow, I mustn't just blurt these things out. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to become extremely great friends. I'm sure within half an hour that they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Yes, but women only do that after they call each other a good deal of other things. Now, my dear fellow, if we are to get a good tale of wisdom, we really should go and dress. Do you know it's nearly 7?
Oh, it's nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I've never known you when you weren't.
Well, what do you want to do after dinner? Shall we go to the theatre?
Oh, no, I loathe listening.
Well, we might go to the club.
Oh, no, I loathe talking.
Well, we might trot along to the Empire about 10.
Oh, no, I can't bear looking at things.
What do you want to do?
Nothing.
Well, it's awfully hard work doing nothing. But I have no objection to hard work, as long as there's no definite object in mind.
Miss Fairfax.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
I really don't think I can allow this, Gwendolyn.
Oh, Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that. Ernest, we may never be married. I'm afraid from the expression on Mamma's face, we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and although I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Darling.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibres of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character is exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. Of course, that will require serious consideration.
My own darling.
I will communicate with you daily. How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I've turned around already, actually.
You may also ring the bell.
I shall escort you to a carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I shall take Miss Fairfax down.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I probably shan't be back till Monday. I need the dress suits, the smoking jackets.
yes,
Bunbury clothes.
sir.
I hope tomorrow is a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're the perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I've ever cared for in my life. What now do you so amused at?
Oh, I'm simply worried about my poor friend Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take good care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. The only thing that's never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.